Hey, it's our Bicentennial. This is the 200th episode of the Marist Poll's weekly Poll Hub podcast. And so we're bringing on two of our favorite and longest running friends, notice we didn't say oldest, to celebrate. But before you get your noisemakers ready for a fun-filled romp, we're looking back at what's occupied the world and this show for nearly 18 months now, the COVID pandemic. We are going to be talking about separating the science from the fiction. Think of that as a nutritious birthday dinner. Then we break out the cake for Lee's fun fact for the second week in a row with a guest, but this segment is like none we have ever done in 200 episodes. Promise, it's worth the wait. So, happy birthday to us. Let's get to it. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Poll Hub. I'm Jay DeDapper, Director of Innovation here at the Marist Poll.
And I'm Barbara Carvalho, Director of the Marist Poll.
And I'm Lee Miringoff, Director of the Marist College Institute for Public Opinion.
And this is episode 200. As our rundown says, raise the roof, people.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we made it to 200. It's our bicentennial, and we just need to get a flag, some kind of Betsy Ross style flag that says Poll Hub, and then we're in business. So for our 200th anniversary episode, or birthday, I guess, whatever it would be, we thought we'd bring on one of the most special guests we could, longtime friend of the Poll, and someone who has an awful lot of knowledge about something that has taken up an awful lot of our time over the last year. Dr. Irwin Redlener, who is the Director of the Pandemic Resource and Response Initiative at the Earth Institute, which is at Columbia University. Irwin, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Jay.
So, of course, the thing I was hinting to is the coronavirus pandemic, the COVID pandemic. We have on this podcast, we talk a lot about polls and public opinion and all of that. We have been asking and looking at questions about the coronavirus for last year, more than the last year. And we have for the last couple of weeks been talking about how it really seems like we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We have turned the corner. We are near the end. Are we being too optimistic?
Yes and no. And let me explain that ambivalence, Jay, because the fact is that we've made enormous progress. The number of cases are being reported every day. Hospitalizations, fatalities are all down. The trend is good for the most part. Although in the last few days, literally, there have been more concerns raised that we may be getting a little too complacent for a couple of reasons. Number one, the reality is that the United States has a very mixed bag right now in terms of great differentiation among the states in terms of how many people have been vaccinated, what kind of controls are in place, and so on. So if you live in New York, you're looking at a very rosy picture. If you're living in Mississippi, which is probably the least vaccinated state in the United States, things do not look good at all. And the more people you have in any given geographic area who are not vaccinated, the more they're susceptible to the second point about not getting too complacent, which is that we still have a number of variants or mutations of the virus that are running around, the latest of which is called the Delta variant, which is a mutation that came out of India, and it's causing a lot of new infections in the UK. We have some new variants in the environment with a lot of people who are not yet vaccinated in various parts of the country. That is a potential formula for a resurgence of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We have, from the beginning, politicized, or this virus has been politicized. We were in New Hampshire on the eve of the presidential primary way back when, and the president was there speaking to a gathering, and he was calling it a hoax. At that point, we were nowhere near the kind of problems that we had lived through since. From where you're sitting right now, what is the fundamental reluctance that you think is to people not wanting to do what I consider to be an obvious choice, get vaccinated? What's the reluctance?
Yeah.
Why are we still sort of hanging it at a gap?
Well, it's not, Lee, this is the main question of our time now. But the fact is, it's not a single type of reluctance or single rationale for not getting vaccinated. There's a host of reasons. And let me start with the worst, which are the true anti-vaxxers who live and breathe conspiratorial theories or ideas that range from, the insertion of microchips into your body if you get vaccinated, to the one I heard most recently is that if you get vaccinated, you will become magnetized. People literally talking on the internet about how a spoon or fork would stick to your forehead after you've gotten vaccinated because you've been vaccinated. To other theories like Joe Biden has been hard recommending vaccinations because he's getting payoffs from the vaccine manufacturing companies. So there's a group of people out there, and some estimate about 20% of Americans who will not get vaccinated. That's different from the group that are saying, I want more information. I just would like to be a little bit more convinced that it's going to be safe. I'm not going to have anything weird happen to me, and I won't get any complications from the vaccine. And those people are much easier to deal with. And then there's, let's say, another group of people who just don't trust the government. Black Americans, for example, who've had all kinds of experiences in facing disparities in healthcare that were not so obvious, along with things like the Tuskegee experiments, where in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, we allowed a lot of Black American males who had syphilis to not get treated so we could see what happens to untreated people. Those are memories that are now hardwired into the culture of many people. So there's issues of lack of trust, there's issues of hesitancy, and then there's the issues of the, unfortunately, people who are living in a world of craziness, QAnons and other believers in the weirdest kinds of understandings about what these vaccines do. And also a lot of people who just don't believe the narrative that we're dealing with a very serious and deadly injury. So it's really a potpourri. It's a very important question, because if we're going to get to higher rates of vaccination of people, we're going to have to deal with all of those groups and in different kinds of ways.
You point out, Irwin, that there's quite a large proportion of Americans who are not likely to get vaccinated. Right now, we see about 6 in 10 adults nationwide have gotten at least one dose. We've seen that in our polling too, and as you point out, about a quarter of those of American adults say that they're never going to get vaccinated. Is this something different than we have experienced in the past, or is this the kind of the nature of kind of national vaccination, efforts?
Well, this is a really good question, Barbara. It's very complicated, and it's increasingly complicated because of the ways that messages get spread around and reinforced, i.e. the internet and social media. So what might have been 20 years ago, people just know we don't want to get, the MMR shots for our children because we heard that they can cause autism. You could kind of keep those people isolated. You could try to work with them and point out that data suggesting there might be a link between MMR vaccine and autism was completely bogus, and that's that. But now with social media, everything is getting amplified in ways that are really, they're really distressing and much harder to deal with. And the problem is there's two issues that your question reminds me about. One is that it's the issue of risk. And this is it's very interesting, because if I said to you, Barbara, I'm sick of wearing seatbelts in the car. I'm just not doing it anymore. And hopefully I won't get caught and I won't get a ticket, but I'm not wearing a seatbelt. You might argue with me and tell me what, the chances of something horrible happening if I got into an accident. But at the end of the day, that's my risk. I decided to go, freestyle cliff climbing with no ropes and so on. Whatever.
I go horseback riding, Irwin.
Yeah. So, but you don't ride that horse up a sheer cliff, do you? I mean,
or off a cliff.
I try not to, but one never can predict the future.
Because I like you, I beg you not to do it. But at the end of the day, you're free to do whatever you want. If you're taking a personal risk, or you think you're characterizing it as a personal risk by not getting vaccinated, no, that's not a personal risk. It's a societal risk. It's a risk to your family. It's a risk to vulnerable people who can't get vaccinated. It's a risk to your community, and so on. And I just don't think we really have the right to subject other people to our sense of risk. Some things you can do, you could say, yeah, I think I'll have have a bottle of vodka before, going on my road trip. That's not okay either, because it's not just you're putting a whole bunch of other people at risk. So I think we have some interesting things that we could talk about related to what does it mean to take risk. And I think that is really, it's important. And I don't think, and people are talking about it's their right to refuse to take a vaccine. Well, is it really their right to expose the people with certain kinds of illness that cannot get vaccinated or will not have an effective vaccine? Where does that become okay? And this is one of the things that ethically and philosophically we're trying to wrestle with right now, but it's really complicated.
Can I come back to the Delta variant for a minute? Because I'm interested about this, in that most of the people that I know, all the people I work with, we are all vaccinated. And it has been everybody I talked to in the last few weeks, the conversation comes very quickly to, wow, I went out to a restaurant and sat in it, which, again, if we're in Mississippi, it wouldn't be a big thing. But up here in the Northeast, it's a subject of conversation. What I'm wondering about with the variant is, one of the things that comes up is that I think a lot of us who are vaccinated feel like, well, you know what? I'm vaccinated. My risk is limited. And if these jerks don't want to get a vaccine, I can't change my life because of that. And I think part of that ignores the risk that remains out there. And we talk about the Delta variant, but we've had other variants, and there are likely to be variants in the future. What is the real kind of risk and responsibility for those of us who are vaccinated?
Well, if you are vaccinated, and let's say you've had 2 doses of Moderna or Pfizer vaccine, you've waited a few weeks, you may or may not have your immune status verified by a blood test. But in the case of my wife and I, we were vaccinated by February. And we had a few weeks later, we did have the blood test, and we have the appropriate immune response. So I'm not particularly worried about me getting sick or hospitalized for the vaccine. But keep in mind that those vaccines, the ones that are around, including the J&J vaccine, have been, it's been established that they prevent people from getting very sick, being hospitalized, and dying. They don't necessarily, they probably do, but they don't necessarily keep you from getting a low level infection, maybe asymptomatically, which means that you could potentially carry it to others. But I don't feel that I'm personally at risk going to a restaurant, whether the people sitting at the next table are not vaccinated or they are vaccinated. I don't feel at risk. But other people might be at risk. So as a public health person, and really as a citizen, I figure, like, who gives you the right to sit around there potentially spreading a virus to people who may not be covered for reasons that are no fault of their own? So it becomes a moral and ethical question that becomes, really important in our society. So, there you have it in a way.
One of the things that you're alluding to now is, we're talking about the vaccine and how some people have been reluctant to that. Grant all those arguments, even if I disagree with most of them, granted their reluctance, what is so hard about wearing a mask? That was also put through the ringer. And to me, that's, just off the charts in terms of ethics and morality. But I want to ask you really that was a speech. Now I'm going to ask you a question. What is it about science that people are just challenged right now and are so unaccepting of this information that has gone through multiple tests and multiple ways to make a rigorous vaccine? What is about science that people just don't believe anymore?
Well, of all the things that Donald Trump did to us as a society, the fact that he destabilized people's faith in the scientific process. Science is not 100% infallible by any stretch of the imagination. It's only a process where we make an assumption, we try to test it. We may have to modify that assumption, and what we thought 6 months ago may be different. It's a process of learning. Donald Trump so degraded our understanding of science and how critical it is. I think that will go down as one of the greatest nightmares that he created in America. It's going to be very hard to fix that. And what he did was politicize science. Do you remember when, if you wanted to show your loyalty to Donald Trump, you could wear a MAGA hat or you could not wear a mask, or both. But either one of those, he would manage to equate the refusal to wear a mask with political support of him as as an autocrat. And I think it's, like I said, it's going to take a long time to fix that. But there you go. I mean, Carl Sagan, the late scientist, the late great scientist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, his heir apparent, as far back as the philosopher Bertrand Russell in the UK, basically were of the opinion that you cannot have a democracy without science, respect for science, because science provides truth, even if it's a dynamically evolving truth. That's what science does for us. And without truth, then you can get away with the big lies. If there's no standard for truth, if people don't respect truth, then you could keep repeating this insanity, like Trump won the election or the election was stolen, et cetera, et cetera. So these things are all coupled together in a macro sense that makes me very worried, because it's not like a handful of crazies. We're talking about, 60 or 70% of the Republican voters who actually believe Trump won the election and it was stolen from him. If they had respect for truth, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well, hopefully we will have a different conversation in the future, especially when it concerns the pandemic. Dr. Irwin Redlener, thanks so much for coming on for our 200th episode of Poll Hub. You've been a friend, obviously, of the poll for a very long time, and it's good to get, when we talk about science, in fact, it's good. We talk a lot about science, in fact, and numbers and public opinion. It's good to get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. I'm not calling you a horse, but to...
you can call me whatever you want, Jay. It's fine. Yeah.
But to get the straight dope, about the science here, I think is so important for all the reasons that you've talked about. So thank you so much for joining us.
Jay, if you send me a letter saying I was the 200th guest on your podcast, I will frame it.
You got it.
A pleasure speaking to all of you. It's a great fast-moving segment. Thanks so much for having me.
Right now, we're going to take a dramatic change in tone here to get to my fun fact. This is not a poll today. This is our 200th birthday, anniversary, whatever it is. And so we're going with a live Steve Thomma, our friend, who a longtime friend of Mike Bo, but also in his real world, is the executive director of the White House Correspondents Association. But that's not why he's on the program today, although feel free to talk about that. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna be talking hot dogs. But before we get to that, let's talk what's going on in Washington right now. What's the big issue?
The single biggest issue in all of Washington, D.C. is the cicadas. These once every 17-year bugs that come out of the ground and have taken over. There was a weather map on the local station yesterday. It looked that big green blob from rain. It was full front. It wasn't rain. It was the billions of cicadas showing up on radar. This is not a science fiction movie. They are ubiquitous. They are all over. You open the window, the drone will, from their noise, will drown out conversations. They've dive bombed cars, people, the deck. You can't go out. It's unbelievable.
So why aren't there any good conspiracy theories about this? There are about everything else. I mean, is this some sort of a plot or something?
Well, the last time we had them, it was George W. Bush's presidency. And we haven't heard from any of the Bushies, saying, But last night, the press plane we charter for the press to fly over to the UK to cover the president's summit got grounded because of a cicada strike in the engine. They had to sit there for 7 hours while they flew a new plane from Cleveland. I mean, the cicadas have taken over everything, and it's unifying. Everyone agrees. I haven't even found the most extreme member of either party who dissents from this.
Oh, so we finally have unity in America where we couldn't get before. However, there are recipes for what to do. Like, you can have your cicadas fried or baked, I guess. Or, I mean, what is with those people?
Well, they're nuts. They're grotesque. People keep taking close-up pictures, I guess, to show off the fact that their cameras can take close-up pictures of something that's 2 inches long. They have these big red eyes. You couldn't make these up in a science fiction studio. They're grotesque looking. Why anyone would look at it and think, wow, I want to eat one of those.
Right. Well, now to the reason the segue about eating gets an opportunity to talk about what we were originally going to talk about, and that is the hot dogs. And you are an expert from Chicago in the hot dog eating hot dog toppings. I'm getting there. I'll get there.
Get there, Lee. Hot dogs.
What makes a good hot dog? Forget about the hot dog. What makes for the toppings?
Well, first, there's no such thing as a good hot dog. There's the Chicago hot dog, and then there's everything else. The Chicago hot dog, which is nature's perfect food. There is no better hot dog on the planet Earth. It starts with the dog itself. It's Vienna all-beef hot dog. Vienna is a brand, not the country of origin. I've come to like Hebrew National, which is a more East Coast hot dog. Very good, but it's not Vienna beef. And in Chicago, you'll actually see the logo of Vienna beef on, I would seriously guess, 20,000 different places in Chicago. As a way of advertising, we've got the one. And it's a poppy seed bun. If you put it on a sesame seed bun or a plain bun, you've lost the battle. So those two are the basics. But the toppings are yellow mustard, neon green relish. You can have peppers, 2 slices of tomato, and a quarter dill pickle spear. That's dill pickle.
Yeah, I know we have a personal battle over dill versus sweet pickles, which goes back several years. I know that.
I'm on the sweet pickle side of things, and I know you're on the dill pickle side of things.
On certain things, like edible things, I like dill. Sweet pickles are good for cicadas.
So you actually have hit virtually everything in our poll. We asked in May to Americans, we said, do you eat hot dogs? So only 68% of Americans said they eat hot dogs. I think that's a problem right there, but okay.
What do you mean only? That's 2/3 of American adults.
Dog.
It didn't even include kids. It didn't include kids.
Everybody
Nobody under 18.
Everybody should eat hot dogs. That should have been 100%. Anyway, so of the adults who eat hot dogs.
This is not a vegan episode.
Of the adults who eat hot dogs, 68% of Americans, 47%. Number one answer. What do you think that was, Steve? 47%.
47%.
Number one answer.
Said what? What was?
Said for the toppings. What's the number one answer?
Mustard.
At 47%. Mustard. You're right. Very good.
In a baseball game where you don't have a lot of choices. Your Yankee Stadium or White Sox Park or Nat Stadium. The mustard thing is the easiest thing. And mustard and a regular hot dog, that's a good start. Yeah, definitely mustard.
Number two at 30%. What do you think that is?
Well, this was the one Steve didn't mention, which
right.
is
because it doesn't belong
there. You're not going
on
there.
A hot dog.
No,
it doesn't belong.
I can't even talk. I have to go now. If you're going to talk about that red thing, I'm not.
So you are correct. Ketchup is number two at 30%. I have to agree with you. It doesn't belong on anything.
Can we have a regional breakdown on that poll?
We do.
Yeah, we actually do.
Oddly enough, in the Midwest, Steve, mustard and ketchup are tied in our national poll. This is going to send you into nightmares, I know.
A margin of error, the regional margin of error is
enormous.
So Chicagoans are very chauvinistic about their hot dogs, but also this obsession and fervent opposition to ketchup. People get angry. I mean, if you stand in a line like Superdog on the Northwest Side is my favorite, absolute favorite. And if you order ketchup, everyone will stop talking on their side. And
Absolutely.
I mean, they're aggressive. I don't do that. It's kind of rude. A couple of years ago, Burger King, which I think is a great American fast food place, they introduced hot dogs. But their hot dogs were shown in all their menus, including in the stores, with mustard and ketchup. And Chicagoans boycotted the whole store. I mean, it's a really religious thing.
They were just hedging their bets.
They're hedging their bets, but you gotta
pick a lane.
It's more important to them than the Cubs.
So rounding it out was chili, relish, onions, and other. And then the also inexplicable to me, 1% said unsure. How can you be unsure?
Yeah, how can you be unsure? Well, of the 68%.
Yeah, 1% of that 68% were unsure of what topping was important on their hot dog. Unsure. Come on.
Steve, before we let you go, I've heard one thing that seemed odd, and that was dill pickle with the neon green relish, which is sweet.
It's a taste explosion in your mouth. And by the way, chili on a dog is not a hot dog. It's chili.
It's a chili dog. Yes.
It's like talking American League and National League. Completely different thing.
Well, I'm looking forward in the future to having a real Chicago hot dog and treating you to one too, Steve.
Get him a Nathan's dog, and then we'll see.
I think at the next White House Correspondents Association dinner, which hopefully will be next year, I think you should have condiments on the tray in the middle of the table and just hot dogs, and it'll be forever remembered.
I vote for it. If we have to wear deep sea scuba gear, we're having the dinner.
Well, good luck. You guys have been fighting the good fight professionally and in trying to keep the scholarship part of the White House Correspondents Association going, which is the huge thing about what you really do. Everybody talks about the dinner, but there's tons of people who are getting an education because of all the good work that the association does.
Yep, one of our more pleasant tasks.
Students around the country getting scholarships.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that. And I look forward to, if not a hot dog, at least a burger in DC next time we're down there, which has been a while, but I'm really looking forward to getting, and of course, I'll go for the sweet pickles at that point.
Yeah, ketchup is fine on a burger.
Thank you, Steve. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Poll Hub. Poll Hub is a production of the Marist Poll at Marist College in beautiful Poughkeepsie, New York. I'm Mary Griffith, and Poll Hub's executive producer. Casey Schaff is our production supervisor, and Marcello Bettman is our trusted editor. Thanks, of course, to the Roper Center Archive at Cornell University. They provide us with the ability to look back at survey questions and results over the decades. And don't forget to check out our short series of online learning modules. They can be found on maristpoll.com. The Marist Poll Academy is where we give you the 101 on polls, methodology, and so much more. Oh yeah, and it's free. Of course, if you have questions or comments, reach out to us on social media. We're at Marist Poll on Twitter and Marist Poll on Facebook and Instagram. Finally, if you like what you hear on Poll Hub, please consider leaving a review on your podcasting app of choice. Positive reviews help others find us. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe.